Iria Nova stood at the edge of the broken city. The ruins of Earth's once great civilization spread out before her like a testament to mankind's strength and stubbornness. The air was thick with smoke and the distant hum of engines. War. Engines created to protect, to avenge, to survive. The sky was a dull grey, not from clouds, but from the ash that had settled over the planet. Once this city had been full of life, of hope, of people working to heal a world torn by war. Now it was a symbol of survival, of humanity's refusal to be erased from the universe. Earth had become a death world, a planet so dangerous that it could only be a threat to others. Aria had been born in the middle of it all. Raised in the decimated streets of Earth's last surviving cities, she had learned to survive from an early age. A tactical genius, she had climbed the ranks of Earth's military, becoming the leader of its ragtag resistance. With every loss, every destruction, Aria had grown stronger, her resolve hardened. Her leadership was not born from idealism, but from the relentless desire to prove that humanity could survive in this new galaxy, a galaxy that thought them weak. Under her command, humanity would show the universe that they were far from broken. They were the ones who would rise, no matter how brutal or savage the path. Beside her stood Xander Alston, her childhood friend and second in command. Xander was the voice of reason in Aria's war-torn world, the one who reminded her of peace, even when the war seemed to consume them both. He had always believed in diplomacy, in finding a way to negotiate with the galactic powers, to show that Earth's aggressive history could be left behind. But Xander's hope had been worn thin. The Council's attacks, their threats, had shattered any illusion of peace. He had seen too much violence, too much bloodshed, to believe in peaceful resolutions anymore. His heart wavered between the ideals of diplomacy and the hard reality of survival. And in that tension, his bond with Aria began to fray. "Do you really think we can win this?" Xander's voice broke through the distant rumble of warships, his eyes reflecting a rare glimpse of vulnerability. "We can fight, but at what cost?" Aria met his gaze. The silence between them stretched longer than it should have. She knew what Xander meant. Their victories had been costly, and the weight of their actions was beginning to sink in. But the war was no longer just about survival. It was about humanity's future in the galaxy. "I don't know if we can win, Xander, but I do know we can't lose." Humanity had splintered too into factions. From the ashes of Earth's destruction, various groups had risen, each shaped by different experiences, different philosophies. Some believed they should rebuild as peaceful diplomats, striving to prove their worth without aggression. Others, the more militaristic factions, believed Earth should dominate the galaxy, that their place among the stars could only be secured by force. The divisions were as clear as the scars on Earth's surface. Earth's once thriving society had now become fragmented, a society fighting for its place in a galaxy that had cast them out. But despite the fractures, there was a singular purpose that united them all: survival. Earth's ability to adapt, to survive in the harshest of conditions, had become their greatest strength. Their environment, once a death sentence, had been reshaped by necessity, and the creatures that had once made Earth a lethal place to inhabit now served as their greatest weapons. This wasn't just about fighting for survival anymore. It was about proving they could hold their ground in a universe that saw them as nothing more than a threat. And then the Galactic Council had made its move. Their fleet, a staggering show of technological might, had come for Earth. Aria watched the ships approach, each one a symbol of power, superiority, and doom. The Council had never taken Earth seriously, thinking the planet a primitive relic, too weak to defend itself. But Earth had adapted, fought, and survived. And now, humanity had its chance to prove that its survival was no accident. Arya's decision was simple, if not easy. Earth would fight, but not with just technology or tactics. They would fight with the very creatures that had once terrorized them. The Deathworld project, initially a desperate measure to harness Earth's hostile ecosystem for defense, had become their only hope. Earth's creatures, genetically altered and weaponized, would be their new soldiers. She turned to her command staff, her eyes scanning the room. "Prepare the Deathworld units. We move at dawn." Xander's hesitation was palpable. He had always believed that the strength of Earth lay in their ability to overcome their violent past. Yet here they were, about to unleash the very thing that had been their undoing. Earth's violence made manifest in the form of deadly beasts. "Arya," she interrupted, voice steady, but heavy with the weight of the decision. "We have no choice, Xander. We fight or we die." The battle would take place in the orbit of a barren planet, Earth's final stand. As the alien fleet arrived, it became clear that humanity had outsmarted their enemies. The Galactic Council had underestimated Earth. What they had thought would be a slaughter became a war for survival. Massive alien warships were torn apart by Earth's monstrous creatures, their massive bodies slamming into the hulls of the sleek council ships. What had once been a liability, the beasts of Earth, had become humanity's ultimate weapon. Arya watched as the tide of battle shifted in their favor, the creatures roaring in victory, pushing the enemy back and overwhelming their superior. Technology with sheer brutality. Humanity's ferocity and ingenuity caught the Council off guard. The scales of war were tipping, and Earth's survival was no longer in question. The cost was steep, but the fight was far from over. But as the battle raged on, Arya realized the cost of victory. The war was about more than survival now. It was about the very essence of humanity. They had fought with everything they had. But what kind of future would that future hold? In the heat of the battle, Arya made her choice. She would destroy the very weapons that had secured their survival, the Deathworld project. It was the only way humanity could move forward without becoming the tyrants they had once feared. The weapons that had turned the tide of the war would be erased, leaving humanity to rebuild without relying on violence. Arya ordered the destruction of the Deathworld facilities, knowing the weight of this decision would forever shape their future. As the last of the Deathworld weapons were destroyed, Arya felt the weight of the moment settle on her shoulders. Humanity had survived, but the cost was more than she had ever imagined. The Galactic Council, now realizing that humanity's most destructive weapon was gone, took a step back. A new treaty was signed, granting Earth a place among the stars, but under strict supervision. Earth was no longer an outlaw, but a fragile member of the galactic community. Arya, standing at the precipice of this new era, knew the road to peace would be long and filled with challenges. But for the first time in her life, she could see a future beyond the war. A future for humanity, one where Earth's strength would not be measured by how many enemies they could destroy, but by how they could learn to coexist with the galaxy around them. The real battle was only just beginning. The dark expanse of space seemed endless as the Galactic Council's massive fleet cruised toward Earth's orbit. Their ships, vast and imposing, dwarfed the human vessels that moved in a ragtag formation beneath them. The message had been sent, loud, clear, and final. Earth had been given its ultimatum: disarm and accept exile or face complete annihilation. The Council had watched Earth for decades, seeing a volatile species too dangerous for the galaxy. With advanced technology far beyond anything humanity could muster, the Council's forces were a beacon of overwhelming power, prepared to wipe out Earth's existence in a single, decisive strike. They saw Earth as nothing more than an untamed, primitive force, a species to be eradicated, never to rise again. The Council's arrogance was palpable, and yet, as their fleet closed in, they grossly underestimated humanity's resilience and ingenuity. On Earth, Aria Nova stood at the heart of a war-torn command center, the hum of machinery and flickering lights casting an eerie glow. Her face was hard, her eyes focused on the screen before her. The Galactic Council's ultimatum flashed across the screen, a cold, lifeless statement. The message was clear: yield or die. The weight of the moment settled over her. She knew what was coming. The galaxy thought they had Earth's fate sealed, but Aria knew better. Earth had survived against all odds before, and it would do so again. Aria had hoped, no, prayed, that negotiation might work, that the galaxy might see Earth as more than just a threat. But as she stood there, watching the message flash again, she felt the weight of the truth press heavily against her chest. Earth's isolation wasn't a result of misunderstanding. It was a deliberate choice by the galaxy, one born from fear. Fear of humanity's power, fear of their unpredictability. The time for diplomacy was over. She made a decision then, a cold, calculated decision. The war they were about to face wouldn't be a matter of negotiation. It would be a battle for survival. With a single breath, she let go of the hope for peace. Earth would fight or it would die. The choice was made. But to survive, Earth would have to turn its greatest weakness into its greatest strength. Aria looked toward the Deathworld project, a collection of Earth's most terrifying creatures, beasts that had once threatened human settlers. The Council had underestimated Earth's environment, but Aria knew that what had once been their curse could now be their salvation. Earth's creatures, mutated, enhanced, and weaponized, would become their weapons. There would be no mercy in this fight. Earth would use its savage, untamed nature to prove the galaxy wrong. And if that meant unleashing the horrors of their world, then so be it, Aria's voice cut through the quiet tension in the command room. Mobilize the Deathworld units. Prepare for battle. We fight for our survival. There is no turning back. The first wave of the Galactic Council's fleet arrived in Earth's orbit, their ships larger than anything humanity had ever seen. They hovered like giants, ready to rain destruction down upon the planet. Aria's forces were outnumbered, their ships small and crude in comparison. Yet, Earth had one advantage: the beasts. As the first waves of genetically enhanced creatures were unleashed, the galaxy's expectations were shattered. Giant predators, their massive forms ripping through the atmosphere, tore into the Council's warships. Insects, large, terrifying creatures, swarmed over enemy forces, devouring them whole. The Galactic Council had expected a weak, disorganized resistance, but instead, they found themselves up against a planet's deadly natural force. Humanity's most dangerous creatures became their greatest asset. As the battle raged, Aria's forces adapted to each new challenge, pushing back against the might of the Council. The Council's technologically advanced ships were no match for the savagery of Earth's beasts and the ferocity of humanity's tactics. The balance of the fight began to shift in Earth's favor, but it came at a steep cost. Aria knew that the battle was only the beginning. While humanity fought for survival, they were also fighting for their place in the galaxy, a place that had been stolen from them long ago. The battle reached a fever pitch, and Earth's forces, pushed to their limits, began to turn the tide. Humanity's ingenuity, their ability to adapt, proved to be their greatest weapon. The Council's fleet, once thought invincible, now found itself struggling against an unpredictable enemy. Earth had become a force of nature, untamed and relentless. The Council, realizing that humanity's survival instinct had evolved into something far more dangerous, re-evaluated their position. No longer was Earth a primitive world to be erased. It was a power that had to be reckoned with. As the final waves of battle unfolded, Aria made a decision that would forever change the course of humanity's history. She ordered the destruction of the very weapons that had secured their survival, the Deathworld project. The moment was bittersweet. Earth had proven its strength, but at the cost of their most powerful weapons. The creatures that had turned, the tide of battle would be erased, ensuring that humanity would no longer rely on violence to survive. The choice weighed heavily on Arya's shoulders: survival or self-destruction. By abandoning Earth's most powerful weapons, Arya gave humanity a chance at a future that wasn't defined by violence. As the last of the Deathworld project's facilities were destroyed, the Galactic Council watched, stunned by humanity's decision. They had come to Earth with plans to annihilate, but now they faced a species capable of redemption. Earth's survival was no longer a matter of brute force. It was a matter of strength through restraint. In the moment of stunned realization, the Council agreed to a new treaty, allowing Earth to rejoin the galactic fold. But the road ahead was fraught with uncertainty. Earth's place was secured, but its future was fragile. Arya stood before the shattered remnants of Earth's most powerful weapons, her heart heavy with the weight of her choices. Humanity had survived, but the question remained: what kind of future would they build? The battle was over, but the war for Earth's soul had only just begun. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's defiance, and now Earth had to prove that it could not only survive but thrive without the violence that had once defined its existence. The path to peace would be long, but it had started, and that was something Earth had earned. The war between Earth and the Galactic Council had reached a pivotal moment. Humanity, once on the brink of annihilation, had proven that it could adapt, survive, and fight back. Arya Nova stood in the command center of Earth's fleet, staring out at the endless expanse of space. The remnants of the Council's forces, battered and retreating, lingered in the distance, but Arya knew that the war was far from over. Earth's victories were hard won, but each one carried a heavy price. Their weapons, once a symbol of Earth's savagery, had now become their salvation. The creatures that once terrorized humanity, mutated, enhanced, and weaponized, had become their most powerful assets. And yet, as the momentum shifted in their favor, the battle for survival was now a fight against their own humanity. As Earth's forces rallied, the tension within Arya's crew began to mount. Xander Alston, Arya's second-in-command and childhood friend, had always been the voice of reason. While Arya had embraced the harsh tactics of war, Xander had held on to the belief that diplomacy and peace could still be achieved. But as the war dragged on and the stakes rose, Xander's belief in diplomacy began to waver. The victories they had secured felt hollow to him. Each battle, each victory, seemed to push them closer to something darker, something they couldn't escape. "Arya, are we becoming what we feared?" Xander's voice was strained, his eyes filled with a conflict that Arya had never seen before. "How long before we lose ourselves in this war? How long before we become the very conquerors we swore to defeat?" Arya's gaze hardened, her hands gripping the console before her. She knew what Xander was asking. She had been asking herself the same question, but Earth's survival had come at a cost, an undeniable, unspoken cost. She had led them to this point, and now, with the power in their hands, the question was whether they could walk away from the edge of tyranny. The internal strife within Earth's leadership mirrored the tension between Xander and Arya. Some of their people had embraced their newfound dominance, their violent methods, no longer questioned. But others, like Xander, began to fear that they were becoming the very thing they had fought so hard to overcome. Earth's fractured leadership had split into factions, those who desired peace and those who believed in total control, in dominating the galaxy to ensure no one would ever threaten Earth again. The division was palpable. Earth had become a paradox, a species that had survived through bloodshed, but now had to decide whether that survival could justify becoming the oppressor. But before Arya could address these growing tensions, another blow struck from within their ranks. Captain Reva Kane, once a trusted ally and a key player in the Deathworld project, betrayed them. Driven by ambition, Reva had secretly made a deal with the Galactic Council, offering to turn the Deathworld project to their advantage in exchange for a position of power. The betrayal cut deep. Reva had been a close confidant, a sister in arms. Arya had trusted her, believed in her. Now she was faced with the brutal reality that even within their ranks, survival could lead to treachery. The confrontation was inevitable. Arya's hands clenched into fists as she faced Reva on the battlefield. The exchange between them was electric, charged with both personal betrayal and the weight of the war they were fighting. "You've sold us out," Arya spat, her voice laced with hurt and anger. "All for power." Reva's eyes flickered with regret, but remained resolute. "I'm doing what's necessary, Arya. Earth's survival doesn't come from idealism, it comes from strength. The galaxy won't tolerate us unless we show them we can dominate." The fight was brutal, physical and ideological. Arya, forced to choose between mercy and survival, made the hardest decision of her life. She ordered Reva's removal, her hands shaking as she watched the woman who had once been her closest ally fall. The cost of victory, Arya realized, was not just physical. It was moral. The world they were creating would either break them or forge something new. But in that moment, Arya knew that humanity's future would never be easy. Despite the internal fractures and the brutal betrayal, Earth's resilience was undeniable. Arya's leadership, tempered by the lessons of war, was about to turn the tide for humanity. She stood before her people, their eyes full of desperation, of hope, of fear, and she saw what they needed: her strength, her vision, her unwavering belief that they could adapt and survive. "The war isn't over," Arya said, her voice strong. "But we've learned something important. We don't just survive. We evolve. We adapt. And that's why we'll win. Humanity's greatest strength lay not in its weapons, but in its ability to adapt." Arya had watched her people face impossible odds, and with each loss they had found new ways to fight, new ways to innovate. It was this resilience, this ability to learn and grow in the face of adversity, that would lead them to victory. The final battle was a spectacle of savagery and brilliance. Earth's creatures, once a symbol of fear, now tore through the Galactic Council's forces with surgical precision. Each beast, genetically enhanced and battle-ready, became a force of nature. The galaxy had underestimated Earth, and now, as the creatures overran the Council's superior technology, humanity's strength became undeniable. The shock was felt across the galaxy. Earth was no longer a fragile, desperate species. It was a deadly force, unpredictable and untamable. The Council's forces, reeling from the sheer ferocity of Earth's response, were left scrambling to regroup. Humanity's tactical brilliance, combined with the raw power of their beasts, had shifted the balance of the war. The galaxy had watched as Earth fought for its future, and now, for the first time, they understood that humanity was not to be underestimated. As the dust began to settle, the cost of the victory became painfully clear. Earth had survived, but what would they do with the power they had gained? Arya knew that the true battle was not for survival. It was for the soul of humanity. Would they rule with an iron fist, or would they build a new future? Would they continue to embrace their primal instincts, or could they evolve beyond the violence that had once defined them? Arya looked out over the battlefield, her people battered but victorious. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: they had earned the right to choose their path. Now, the question remained: would they rise as conquerors, or would They evolve into something greater? The galaxy had underestimated humanity for far too long. As the Galactic Council's fleet approached Earth, Arya Nova stood at the helm of her fleet, watching the immense ships descend toward the barren planet. On the fringe of the galaxy, the Council had assembled the largest invasion fleet in the history of the galaxy, equipped with technology that made Earth's defenses seem laughable. Earth was outnumbered, outgunned, and faced with the ultimate test of survival. The Council's message had been clear: surrender or face annihilation. Yet despite the overwhelming odds, Earth's forces remained steadfast. They would not surrender. They would fight. Arya's mind raced as she surveyed the situation. The odds were stacked against them, but she knew her people. Earth had always found a way to survive, no matter how dire the circumstances. It wasn't just about winning this battle. It was about proving that humanity had a place in the galaxy, that they could fight back against the forces that sought to erase them. The fate of Earth rested on their ability to adapt, to fight, and to survive, no matter what the Council threw at them. The battle commenced with devastating speed. The Galactic Council's ships unleashed a barrage of firepower, their weapons slicing through space with the precision of a perfect storm. But Earth's forces were different. Their fighters, outdated in comparison, moved with an agility and unpredictability that the Council's fleet wasn't prepared for. They were outnumbered, yes, but they were far from helpless. Arya had made sure of that. The creatures of Earth, once viewed as threats, now became their greatest weapon. Mutated and genetically enhanced, these beasts tore into the Council's forces, catching them off guard. Giant predators clashed with alien warships, leaving destruction in their wake. The odds had shifted, if only slightly, but Earth's survival depended on them maintaining this momentum. They had to fight, and they had to keep fighting. Amidst the chaos, Arya felt a familiar sense of unease. The war was no longer just about survival, it was about humanity's very soul. As the battle raged on, she realized something that she hadn't allowed herself to confront. The violence they were inflicting on the galaxy was beginning to blur the lines of right and wrong. The Deathworld weapons, Earth's ultimate advantage, were savage and deadly, but was their use worth the price? As the leader of Earth's survivors, Arya was the one making these decisions. She had led them into this war, but now she wondered if she was leading them down a path of no return. Could they truly call themselves human if they used such barbaric methods to win? Would victory at the cost of their morality make them any better than the Council they fought against? Xander Alston, her second-in-command and childhood friend, had always been her moral compass. As the battle continued, Xander's doubts grew louder. "Arya, we're becoming what they feared, what we feared," he said one night, his voice filled with desperation. "These creatures, these weapons, we can't keep doing this. We're no better than the Council at this point." Arya's gaze hardened, her voice low but filled with conviction. "We're fighting for survival, Xander. There's no room for weakness, not now." But Xander's words lingered, gnawing at her. He was right in some ways, and that scared her. Earth was a species on the brink of extinction, but the price of their survival, of their power, was more than she was prepared to pay. The fractures within Earth's leadership grew. There were those who believed in the mission, who saw Earth's future through the lens of power and dominance. They wanted to crush the galaxy under Earth's boot to ensure that no one would ever threaten them again. Then there were those, like Xander, who wanted peace, who believed that humanity's future lay not in fear but in cooperation. The tension between the factions became palpable. Earth was no longer a united front. It was a species divided, torn between its past and its future. Then came the betrayal. Captain Reva Kane, once a trusted ally and leader within Earth's forces, had struck a deal with the Galactic Council. Driven by ambition and a desire for power, Riva had promised to turn over the Deathworld project in exchange for a seat of influence in the new galaxy order. Arya had trusted Riva. They had fought side by side, shared victories, and weathered losses together. But now Riva had made a choice that would turn her against everything they had fought for. The confrontation between Arya and Riva was inevitable, as Arya stood in the heart of the command center face to face with her former comrade. The weight of the betrayal was almost unbearable. "You've sold us out," Arya spat, her voice filled with hurt and anger. "All this just for power." Riva's eyes narrowed, a flicker of regret passing across her face. "It's not like that, Arya. I'm doing what's necessary for our survival. The Council will help us, give us power. You've always been too soft." The two women fought, not just physically, but ideologically. Arya's heart broke as she realized that Riva, the woman she had trusted above all others, had become a symbol of everything Earth had feared. Arya made the hardest decision of her life, to remove Riva from the equation. It was a brutal, painful choice, but it was necessary. The battle for Earth's soul wasn't just against the Council, it was against the darkness that threatened to consume them from within. In the heat of the war, Arya realized something. Humanity's true strength wasn't in their weapons or their creatures, but in their ability to adapt. Every loss, every setback drove them to innovate, to evolve. Earth's military prowess was impressive, but it was humanity's ingenuity that had turned the tide. Earth's creatures, once feared and misunderstood, had become the key to their survival. Arya urged her people to embrace their survival instincts, but also to remember the lessons they had learned from their mistakes. They had to evolve, if not for victory, then for their future. The final battle came, and it was everything Arya had prepared for. Humanity's resilience shone through as Earth's beasts wreaked havoc on the Council's forces. The odds were still against them, but the tide had turned. Earth was no longer a weak, primitive species. It was a force to be reckoned with, unpredictable and untamable. The Council, watching as their fleets were torn apart by Earth's weapons, finally understood that humanity was no longer the threat they had believed it to be. Earth had become the wild card, the untamed force that could not be controlled. But as the last of the Council's forces retreated, the question remained: what kind of future would humanity have? Would they rise as conquerors, or would they find a way to move beyond the violence that had brought them to this point? Arya had fought for survival, but she had also fought for the soul of her people. She had proven that Earth could adapt, could evolve, but now she had to lead them into a new era, one where the battle for survival no longer defined them. The war was over, but the scars it left on Earth were deep, both physically and emotionally. Arya Nova stood before the remnants of humanity's fractured forces, facing a future that seemed just as uncertain as the war they had fought. The battlefield was silent now, but the tension was thick. Earth had survived, yes, but at what cost? The once proud planet, now a symbol of defiance, had earned a fragile peace, but that peace was built on the very same violent instincts that had nearly destroyed it. Arya had spent countless hours trying to rebuild, attempting to mend the rift between Earth and the rest of the galaxy. The Galactic Council, still wary of humanity's potential for destruction, had granted Earth a seat at the table, but with strict conditions. The question that lingered in the air was whether humanity could truly evolve beyond its past, whether it could move from a species defined by conquest to one capable of cooperation. As Arya looked out over the planet she had fought so hard to protect, the weight of her leadership felt heavier than ever. She knew that survival had been only the first step. The real battle was ahead, proving that humanity had changed, that they could be more than what they once were. Earth's people, scarred by years of war, began the slow process of rebuilding. They had once been a force of destruction, but now They had to prove they could be something more. Arya led the charge, guiding them through a period of reflection and growth. The tension was palpable as old habits died hard. There were those who, still driven by the fear of being wiped out, believed in the old ways, the ways of power and dominance. But Arya's vision was different. She wanted to prove that humanity could collaborate, that Earth's future didn't have to be defined by war. The road was not easy. Arya faced constant opposition from factions within her own people, those who longed for peace and those who thirsted for power. It seemed that no matter how much progress they made, the desire for control was always there, lurking beneath the surface. Arya had fought for Earth's survival in the past, but now she had to fight for its future. Her leadership was being tested in ways she had never imagined. The war had forged her into a military leader, but peace required a different kind of strength, a strength she was still learning to wield. As Earth began to re-enter the galactic fold, Arya's position as a leader became even more precarious. The galaxy no longer saw Earth as a threat, but neither did they trust it completely. Humanity had been a rogue planet, and now they were trying to fit into a galaxy that viewed them with suspicion. The Galactic Council had granted Earth a fragile peace, but the future remained uncertain. Would humanity fall back into old habits and try to dominate once again? Or could they forge a new path, one of collaboration and shared responsibility? The future of Earth would be defined not by war, but by the choices its leaders made now. The question of whether Earth could truly change haunted Arya. She had made decisions during the war that would define her, but peace was different. It required restraint, something that had never come naturally to her people. Could they move beyond their past and become a force for good in the galaxy, or would the temptation of power pull them back into conflict? The scars of their violent past would not fade easily, and there were many who believed that only through strength could Earth protect itself. But Arya knew that if Earth was to have a future, they needed to embrace cooperation, not just strength. The future was full of uncertainty, but for the first time in a long while, Arya could see hope. The path ahead was unclear, but humanity had proven that it could adapt, evolve, and survive. They had fought for their place in the galaxy, and now they would fight for something more. A future where they were not just survivors, but collaborators. The challenges ahead would be many, but Arya felt a sense of purpose. Earth's journey was far from over, but this new chapter could be one of redemption. If they could learn from their past, if they could resist the lure of domination, Earth could find a new role in the galaxy, a role where peace, not war, defined their future. As Arya stood at the helm of humanity's future, she knew the road would be long and difficult. There were still many who feared Earth, who feared its potential for destruction. But Arya had seen humanity's true strength, their ability to adapt, to grow, to change. They had survived, and now it was time to build. The question was no longer whether Earth could survive, but whether it could evolve into something more. The galaxy had seen what Earth was capable of, and now it would see what Earth could become. The future was open, full of possibilities, but full of risks as well. Earth was no longer just a rogue planet. It was a force for peace, or at least that was the vision Arya held, even as the uncertainty of the galaxy loomed overhead. Would humanity rise to the occasion, or would they fall back into old habits? Only time would tell, but for now, Earth's future was full of hope, and Arya Nova was ready to lead her people into the unknown.